from your stare, as the life that lies behind your eyes is stolen by a blinding light that will never care if you're there. Well, I care. Ooh, I don't wanna feel alone. Ooh, so I'll dream about a home where we are just kids staring up at the stars, innocent without a light to blind our hearts. Be in this world with me, is that too much to ask? Is it me living in the past? Or did we forget who we are? Photographs stained with time, and laughter remembered in the freedom of togetherness. I take comfort in what's known, in our love that swings in roundabouts. Childlike, I don't wanna feel alone. Ooh, so I'll dream about a home where we are just kids staring up at the stars, innocent without a light to blind our hearts. Be in this world with me, is that too much to ask? Is it me living in the past? Or did we forget who we are? Come home, come home, come home, and we'll be two kids getting lost in our hearts. With a kiss you'll take me right back to the start. Just kids staring up at the stars, innocent without a light to blind our hearts. I'm here and you're with me, and that is all I ask. Can we keep living in the past? Let's dream to be more than we are.
This is the inaugural Business and Arts South Africa Assembly, partnered by British Council Southern Africa Arts. And that was Just Kids, performed by Kiruna Lint-Tavar and co-written with Stephen Anthony Hayden. Assembly is not a conference, an unconference, an indaba, a colloquium, or a symposium. Cultural and creative industries currently provide nearly 30 million jobs worldwide and employ more people aged 15 to 29 than any other sector. Stressing the need to protect and support the creative economy in the aftermath of COVID-19, Ambassador Farouk Iqbal Khan, Deputy Chief of Cabinet of the Office of President of General Assembly, called upon the global community to place culture at the center of its policymaking and to use it as a key component of economic and social recovery, through partnerships with different sectors and communities focusing on Indigenous people, youth, and women. BASA Assembly is a response to that call. To officially welcome you, here is the phenomenal and formidable Chairman of Business and Arts South Africa, Charmaine Subramani.
Hello everyone, all virtual protocol observed. Here we are, at the tail end of one uncommon year, presented with the prospect of another year unmatched in how we'll be expected to behave and survive. Our world has changed to such an extreme, presumably the concerns of which we concentrate should too. In fact, I say no, or rather, not entirely. Rather, this is the time to recognize that reinforcement, support, and advocacy for the creative economy is more important than ever. What is up for debate, and maybe even potential elimination, is the mechanisms by which we achieve this. Valued members, creatives, partners, presenters, and panelists, it is my honor to address you on behalf of the BASA Board of Directors for the official launch of BASA Assembly, partnered by British Council Southern Africa Arts. BASA's strategic plan contained more foresight than we had anticipated, in that the three primary business objectives it outlines are paramount to the sustainability in this topsy-turvy time. The first objective, building a sustainable organization driven by social cohesion and shared value. The second objective, leveraging BASA's research to advocate for the value of the arts. And the third objective, contributing to a highly networked ecosystem of business and the arts. Assembly is an initiative that affirms all three of these objectives through a robust program of live and virtual engagements across social, digital, and media platforms. This includes talks by creative industry practitioners and business thought leaders, facilitated conversations, panel discussions, interviews, podcasts, and curated conversations. The key tone we're aiming for is diverse, not divisive discourse, nor do we seek an echo chamber. If you have an idea, a suggestion, a proposal, or an opinion, we want to hear it. Now is the time for passionate appeal and promotion. Anchoring our engagement is the launch of ArtsTrack No. 9, partnered by BMI. This is a biennial research project tracking consumer engagement within the arts and culture sectors and the various perceptions located within arts and culture sponsorships. This wide-ranging research is an indispensable resource, particularly with regard to an ongoing engagement with arts and culture sponsorships and/or partnerships. Our theme is Creativity Now, Cultural Intelligence in the time of COVID-19. In a world where we have yet to settle on the new normal, what insights can cultural intelligence offer in terms of rebooting the creative economy? According to the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Isabel Durant, the creative industries are critical to the Sustainable Development Agenda. They stimulate innovation and diversification, are an important factor in the burgeoning service sector, supporting entrepreneurship and contribute to cultural diversity. We invite you to think on and please share your views and vision regarding the possible opportunities, potential pitfalls for players within the sector, as well as unrealized collaborations with the business and government. Before I officially open BASA's inaugural assembly, partnered by the British Council, I crave your indulgence for a moment longer, but it will be worth it, as I have one other really exciting announcement to make. In April 2020, in response to COVID-19 pandemic, BASA rose to challenge these circumstances presented and extended its supporting grant platform, amplifying its assistance by providing for South African creatives infected or affected by COVID-19. A core objective in BASA's mission is economic empowerment of South African creatives, and this campaign enabled BASA to remain faithful to its mandate by raising support for individual artists to the total value of 1.3 million rand. BASA Assembly is free to all. There is no registration fee. The only requirement to engage with the whole program is your enthusiasm for and opinion of the artistic landscape. So please do engage. The last year has seen unmatched challenges, but it has also been a year when our community has demonstrated equally unrivaled levels of benefication to our peers. As BASA continues our own efforts to offer relief, we encourage you to do the same. There are several options available to you, whether you're considering supporting our ongoing artist relief efforts or contributing to the new BASA Chairman's Fund, which I'm proud to launch today. The purpose of this fund is to raise support for a worthy cause identified by the BASA Chairman. That's me right now, on an annual basis. You can support me by donating as little as 20 Rand when you log on to Assembly via the BASA website. I thank you for your time, energy, and participation. Peace, love, and light to you all. Stay safe.
Botswana, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe form part of the British Council cluster of Southern Africa arts. Underpinned by research and focused on young people aged 18 to 35 years old, British Council arts programs are delivered in partnership with artists, art professionals, arts organisations, collectives, and hubs. Delivering the Assembly Lead Partner Address for British Council, this is the Head of Arts Southern Africa, Lavinia Jones.
I was recently reading an Israeli study conducted by Dr. Orkibi on creative adaptability in times of crisis. He measured if creative adaptability necessarily supported people's cognitive, behavioral, emotional ability to respond to stressful situations, in this instance COVID-19. The analysis suggested that creative adaptability was seen to lower psychological stress over time and has potential protective factor. If this can be said about an individual's response to their creative environment because of creativity in their lives, there is a lot more to understand on the impact of one artist on a group, or for that matter, an artistic collective on a community, organization, town, city, or even country. In the past year, we have seen creative sector across the world respond in different ways and, of course, depending on their discipline, adapt, survive, fail, experiment, and succeed. We have seen on a global scale how the arts has shared more widely together, collaborated more fiercely, considered care, well-being, mental health, compassion, and partnerships with depth. And we will only understand the impact of this with time. There has been immense suffering and loss of exceptional people and talent. And through it all, we have seen adaptations. We have had no choice. There are new communities of practice, an unprecedented embracing of cross-sector collaboration, and we are working differently. On good days, we find and celebrate the opportunities. On bad days, we immerse ourselves in the things we need to survive. There must be place for both. We are still very much in the thick of this pandemic. We are no longer naive at what's ahead, but rather let's look forward at what's possible and with whom. Sharing our lived experience as a creative community, not as an end goal, but rather to take a moment, breathe in, listen to ourselves and others and ask, what do we now know? What don't we know? And what do we want to know? Whilst we are still adjusting to an ever-changing local, regional, and international landscape, there are extraordinary creative and artistic experiences and experiments to share. The landscapes may be different, but our curiosities are the same. British Council Southern Africa Arts facilitates connections, supports creative leadership, and is passionate about innovations happening in art making and creative economy. We celebrate partnering with Business and Arts South Africa on this platform for inquiry. We have a solid history of asking questions together. Thank you to the full BASA team. We are so looking forward to the next 2 days and hope you will be inspired, held up by the people sharing, and consider how you yourself have creatively adapted.
Recognized as one of the leading strategists canvassing current and future trends affecting Africa's youth, Dali Tembo is CEO and co-founder of the Culture Foundry Company, a global consumer insights agency that builds bridges between brands and people. As strategists, anthropologists, and futurists, Culture Foundry Co. connects brands with the right people in real time. They keenly observe the big and small worlds that consumers and brands live in, and they build bridges between brands and consumers not just as data, but as real, empathetic connections.
Dali Tembo here from the Culture Foundry Company. What an amazing privilege it's actually been to be involved in this event and to have an opportunity to speak to you guys about something that's very close to my heart. In fact, as you can tell, culture is at the very heart of why we established the business that we established only a few months ago. I'm going to take you through a couple of thoughts that I have that have come to fruition, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, around research and why culture and cultural intelligence has become such an important part of it. And the beginning portion of that really looks at 4 factors of experience that have culminated in what we now exercise within the business. I'm particularly privileged to have worked for over 20 years in research. Experience is really, really important when you start talking about culture. And on that topic, if anyone ever tells you that they're an expert in culture, you can definitely know that you're not speaking to the real deal. Culture is something that is ever evolving, and as such, something that all of us are learners and continual learners for. I feel particularly privileged because I've had probably about 20 plus years of experience working in research in multiple different countries. I've had probably going on about 500 projects that I've worked on with 50,000 people across 30 plus countries. And over that time, you begin to see the glue that holds together the cultural insights that really form some of the biggest innovations that we've been a part of. The things that I think have really come together to help us form this, particularly with our new business, is to look at both the past, the present, and then of course the future, and how those 3 elements work together to provide us with, again, that cultural intelligence and insight. So on the one end, we have an anthropological background as a business, and what that basically means is that we have a whole bunch of people who look at semiotics, they look at behaviors, they look at beliefs and values that people have, and that gives us a very good picture of where we're coming from in the past. We then take a look at all the consumer research that we do on a daily basis, and that gives us a very good indication of what's happening right now. And then through the use of foresight tools, we're able to project and look into the future to see what are some of the things we're going to be seeing in the next 6 months, year to 3 years. And it's really the hub of all those 3 elements that gives us that gift that cultural intelligence actually is. And I think that the need for this has come out of something quite dramatic, a change in the way people in business work. Essentially, business has declared war on people. Businesses are saying things like, and if any of you have been in boardrooms around the world, you'll probably have heard people use terms like ambush marketing, engaging and executing, barriers to entry, guerrilla tactics, blitz marketing. All of these terms feel more akin to some type of military invasion than they do talking about something that has to do with everyday people. The distance between understanding humans, people, and the cultures that bind them and business have gotten further and further and further away. And our job as a business is to bring that back together. And that's what I really want to talk to you guys about, is some of the tips and things that I've learned that have allowed us as a business to help businesses become more culturally intelligent, more aware, and also more inspirational as institutions out there. So our revolution essentially is not to provide, business case studies. It's not to provide people with just a piece of insight here and there. It's actually to establish genuine connections with everyday people. People who can be local custodians for insight. One of the biggest things that I want to leave you with is a video that we put together that helps to explain the difference between how the rest of the world sees our continent and how we can see that through the different and diverse people that we interact with, we've got a lot of cultural intelligence to sell to the rest of the world. So here's a couple of our local custodians from different countries talking about why they feel proud about what they're doing.
We can talk about reasons why the continent have all of the stereotypes it has.
Africa is a country.
Africa is a hot place.
Africa needs help.
Africa is always late.
This cooked narrative of density and bad governance and jungle living, that's not the perspective I love about my continent. The perspective I love and I cherish the most is that despite the challenges, despite the stereotypes, despite the whole sense of mystery and exclusion, the continent thrives regardless, you know?
Being African means not identifying with your struggle, leapfrogging over it, finding a new way.
Back in the day, people would sit behind a desk and wait for instructions from the thought leaders who are back in the West. But this time, Africa is coming up with all of the solutions you could possibly think of in terms of banking, enterprise, creative, everything.
We believe in creating things from scratch.
Africans are some of the best self-taught engineers in the world. The internet for Africans is an equalizer.
Africa is more than just African prints.
We're modernizing our traditions.
These traditions have somehow resurfaced into international fashion industry so properly.
I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about bursting colors, I'm talking about different veneers of beauty. And that's what I love about my continent. Because truly beautiful things do not ask to be seen.
Africa, my Africa.
What does it mean to be African? What makes this place tick?
Is it the sound? Is it the culture? Is it the young and vibrant youth?
It has its own rules, and its rules have not been understood.
There's all of these avenues that can be explored.
And that is exactly why brands should cooperate, co-create, and build with Africans.
Because the rise of Africa is now.
Isn't it amazing to just hear everyday people talking about their experiences? That's one of the things that we love the most, that we get to do on a daily basis. So before I leave, I want to leave you with 8 tips that I believe were instrumental, little tips that will help you develop the cultural intelligence that we try and emphasize on a daily basis. The first one is ask the same people new questions. People say, you know what, we need to hear a lot of information very quickly, have a huge sample of about 1,000 people, just get a bearing as to what people think. For us, what we do is we often speak to very limited amounts of people, but we speak in depth with them, try to really understand what's happening in their lives, and ask them a multitude of different questions that probe deeper and deeper. 2 people can give you amazing cultural insight if you spend a lot of time with them, as opposed to 200 people that you have very shallow and top-line conversations with. Secondly, one of the most important tips I can give you is don't be militant with your perspective or your brief. Let people set their own agenda, especially when it comes to business that believes they have an idea what a problem is or a challenge is within their business. One of the most amazing things that I've watched is being able to work with everyday people who can more eloquently describe and define issues that brands have that the brand managers themselves have had some trouble doing. 2 examples that are quite big classics in my mind is when we worked for a jeans company that came to us and said, we've actually got a branding problem and we don't believe that young black women in South Africa like our brand. Through our research and through interacting with people, we were able to realize that it had nothing to do with the brand, but actually was a product fit problem. We also had a similar experience with a gym brand, which wanted to do some research to find out what machines to put into their gyms when it came to the hood. And we said to them, the problem isn't just finding out what standardized gym equipment you can put in, but actually let's try and create an experience that's customized for different types of people. Give people an opportunity to help form that brief question with you. And that's been really insightful. Thirdly, particularly when you're dealing with innovation, Do your best to use time to drive creativity. When you're getting lots of input from different people and you're looking for new suggestions on how to do things, one of the things you can do is give people very limited amounts of time to think about innovation and very long periods of time. And both have their benefits. But often if you're looking for people who are quite motivated, involved, and positively challenged, what you want to do is give them very quick, high, short bursts questions and let the discussion flow really, really quickly versus long and elaborate discussions. Time is one of the most incredible resources when it comes to cultural intelligence. The fourth factor that is of vital importance for us has been realizing that the messenger these days is just as important as the message. You know, we're coming from a time where if you look around us, the world is very polarized. And you have to take some time to understand that it's not just about building communication that's comprehensive, communication that people feel some type of relationship to. But it's also about making sure that the person who is at the front and center of that communication is someone who is relatable. It's also an important factor, particularly when it comes to leadership. In the absence of luxury, creativity is born. And I don't think I've heard of a more true quote that speaks to the amazing levels of creativity that can happen when you don't have the abundance that other areas of the world have. Some of the most intelligent, some of the most creative, some of the most inspiring individuals I've met over these 20 years of research have been people who come from impoverished backgrounds or what people might call disadvantaged backgrounds. The truth of the matter is that if you allow people the space in the room to dictate what it is they want from a brand or a service, very often people know, and they're very good at helping to design what that is. The other things that we've watched in the last 20 years has been adopting international trends pretty much blindly about 15, 20 years ago to a period where we had international trends and found our own ways to adapt them to a world now where we have lost that inferiority complex and we're now able to create our own trends. This is a distinct difference in the way that we look at ourselves and look at the international community. And it's important as we venture forth to look at cultural intelligence to see what does that mean in terms of how I change, how I interact with the people in my organization, in different countries, etc. It's really important that we see that there is a difference now in how much we're creating as opposed to just consuming. One of the other areas that's become really important from a brand perspective has been creating safe spaces, particularly when we're making reference to COVID and we're looking at how much of an impact COVID has had on everyone's lives. Safe spaces have become of integral importance when we're talking about creativity and innovation. The ability for people to see other people that look like them, that speak like them, that provide the opportunity to come up with ideas that could be revolutionary. One of the things we're speaking about is about how do we create spaces where people are able to express themselves and most importantly to also be heard. Whether you're working for a business, an NGO or government, these are things that you want to be looking at, making sure are present. One of the last bits of advice or tips that I would love to leave you guys with is probably a little story. And the story goes like this. If you're speaking to people, you're probably going to hear three different perspectives. One of them is mine, one of them is yours, and somewhere in between us, the truth. Everyone has their own perspective. Cultural intelligence means that we need to have the empathy and the ability to listen to all the different perspectives in trying to combine and understand one bigger context. And that's one of the things that I think we need to practice more as a society in general. As researchers, it's something that we've spent a lot of time trying to develop, and it's something that I want to encourage all of you that are out there to do a little bit more of as we try to hone in on what exactly this world looks like from a cultural intelligence perspective. I want to leave you with this video because I think it really hits home about where we are, especially in South Africa as research agencies and people in the creative sphere. Talking for myself as a small business owner who has managed to attract some of the biggest brands in the world to do work with us. from a small little office in Johannesburg or in Cape Town. What we're really hoping for is to inspire those around you to see that if we can get, as you'll see in the video coming up, a Google from New York to look around the world and select a small little agency somewhere in South Africa to do work in different countries, that we have a higher level of cultural intelligence than the rest of the world has told us about in the past. So take that confidence with you as you watch this video and listen to some of the tidbits which I think are quite inspirational and help to provide a beautiful picture of what we're doing.
When I interview Japanese respondents, they always try to make moderator happy.
We cannot really ask the question directly. Majority of Japanese people want to answer being perfectionist.
And then we ask them to evaluate some sort of idea from 1 to 5 scale. They never choose 1 and 5. It's always 2 or 4.
They cannot really give wrong answer. Even we explain there's no right or wrong.
The reason why they have this concept is connected to the concept of honne and tatemae. So honne is the true feeling or desire in their mind, and tatemae is feeling that they display in public. There have been 2 extremes when it comes to brand in Japan. People who knows the value of luxurious goods. So they care about brands, and then the other group of people doesn't really feel value for brands. They always pay full attention to quality of goods, because like a young generation are not interested in purchasing luxury goods anymore. When I talk to Japanese youngsters here and then ask them about what do you think about culture, what is the meaning of future to you, it's all about anxiety. The generation in their 50s and 60s, they are seen kind of the generation who actually pioneered the Japanese economy and who reconstructed the Japanese society after the Second World War. But compared to that generation, 20s and 30s are still very, very young. Today's millennial and Gen Z, they are in a position who needs to follow and respects. I mean, like, as we don't have enough knowledge, we can't really deep dive on specific topic. So I believe this research is going to be the kind of initial steps to gain a fundamental understanding on people's behavior around search activities. Yeah.
Arts managers connect artists with audiences, vision with reality, and money with a mission. In this way, they play an essential role in transforming minds, lives, and communities. Business and Arts South Africa CEO Ashraf Johadin chats to Dr. Andrea Rurale from Milan, Italy, about the social impact of the arts, the degree to which the creative sector and cultural institutions have or have not been agile, responsive, or resilient in terms of COVID-19 challenges, and the future of the creative economy at this point in time.
You've conducted research projects with major enterprises. On a global scale, do you feel that research into the creative sector is used effectively for actionable outcomes?
The answer is definitely no, in the sense that you do research. Typically, the research is something that is abstract, not applied to a context. This is the pure research. When we come to the applied research, so researching on theaters, museum in the situation of the cultural field, cultural institution, we realize that very rarely the research is taken into strong consideration in order to define the actual strategy of the cultural institution. This is because, and this is not necessarily a mistake or a problem, this is actually another outcome of the dualism that is present in any cultural institution so far. So the fact that on one side, we have the necessity of run effectively a business that is profit or non-profit is not important. And on the other side, the role of theater and museums in terms of culture generation, production, stimulation, creation of identities. And all the time we put together and put one against the other, these two elements in a never-ending dualism. The result is that we assist not in a sort of cooperation, but we are assisting to a fight, to a struggle. Because if you are confident you have an experience with a theater, a museum, or a festival, the creative director, the curator of the museum, the artistic director of the theater, or the curator of the festival is interested in working, maybe most of the times within a budget, in creating something. But what is creating, what is putting on a stage in a theater, not necessarily is led by the customer preferences, the audience preferences. And we can argue that if you don't take into consideration the customer preferences, so what the people wants to see when they enter in a theater, you have always the risk that you're going to put on stage something that is not actually effective in the sense of audience development, audience present in a performance.
A recent article in Harvard Magazine carries the title, "The Future of Theatre." Now, considering the challenges of COVID and the fact that so many creatives were agile enough to take their work online, in your vision for the future of live performance globally, will any of it actually be live?
The performance live is completely different, and we need to go back in that situation, for sure. Otherwise, the experience is not the same. What is very important, anyway, is that we are assisting in the year of COVID we're assisting to a sort of natural selection of institutions that are resilient to the market changes, find out a different way of supporting, sustaining, changing the business model, preserving the authenticity of the live performance, and the institutions that are simply waiting for the pandemic to pass, hoping that in the future everything will be as well the same as before. And this is another mistake, because also culture change, time change. There are critical incidents like pandemic that oblige people. My grandmother is 97. She had to be not familiar completely, but to use the Zoom, to use the FaceTime. Otherwise, it's not possible to see the nephews, the grandchildren around, because we have not the possibility to come to meet her. These are changes that the cultural institution needs to take into consideration. Otherwise, if you simply wait for things to change and you are not proactive, you are going to lose. There is another element very important in the theater, particularly. We have a true situation, a funding system based on cultural policy. So the state is supporting the art with funds. This is typical in Europe. And situation, so orientation to the art in this case is easy, because you have the ministry that at the end, or the endowment of the art, whatever, that gives the money for you to maintain your theater for the fixed cost. Or there are situations, US, where everything is led by the market. If you don't have funds, if you don't have a sponsor, you are going to die. In the pandemic, where you cannot perform, therefore you cannot offer to the sponsor what they are paying for, it happened also in the Met, in the museum. They had to sell their work of art because they are depending completely on the private. In Italy, for example, that is always been considered like an example, a bad example of managing the art, because there are no orientation to the market, there are no management orientation. But because we have a system where culture, in a way, is not considered important if you see the amount of GDP produced by the sector, but the theater have a support from the state. They could afford 2019, 2020, and also 2021 to maintain, to keep the same amount of money coming from the ministry. That, of course, is not all, they cannot have the money coming from the ticket office, but at least they can survive.
From your perspective, how has the creative sector coped in terms of the challenges posed by COVID-19? Has the sector coped? And how will the pandemic shape the future of the creative economy for all of us?
In terms of research, my suggestion is to start or contribute, not start because you're not starting from scratch, contribute in the data orientation. So the importance of collecting data properly can be quantitative data, but can also be qualitative data. The impressions, the state of mind, understanding what is in the mind of what is the culture that is influencing. For example, what happens in the community of artists in respect of what happened with Nike and that artist. Did the artist approve it, or they consider it a sort of discount sale of an artistic product to the big international multinational company? This is useful to help building the knowledge. And obviously, all this that I said today is with a deep, deep, deep respect of somebody that really started with the idea of being an artist, a musician, a curator, that couldn't, and that wants to give support, help to the artistic sector. I would like to have the artists free to decide what they want based on empirical evidence of the results. So I don't want to bind the artist, the musician. You have a wonderful festival in South Africa. And the essence of the festival are festivals that are created by somebody that most of the time wants to create. They don't want to be put in blocks of figures and numbers. So you need to have people like me, like people that study management, that help the artist in a performance that is actually not only efficient, but also effective.
Mind fully blown. Thank you so much for those insights, Prof, and for joining us for this inaugural edition of Assembly, partnered by British Council. Thank you.
Onda is a South African-inspired collaboration between dancer-choreographer Hannah Ma and artist-musician Sebastian Purfirst. Having its South African premiere later in the year, here is a sneak preview. Hand in hand on the edge of the sand, they danced by the light of the moon. That's a quote by Edward Lear. Martha Graham called it the hidden language of the soul. And according to author Amit Kalantri, the job of feet is walking, but their hobby is dancing. Get the picture? Dance is and can do many things. It can conjure the unseen, summon spirits from above and below. In fact, once upon a time, dance saw me dancing with a CEO. No, really, I did. Speaking of CEOs, gender non-binary person of many hats, Ashraf Johardin, with more metaphors of dance and a word of thanks on behalf of Business and Art South Africa.
I recently chaired a discussion which featured iconic South African choreographer Alfred Hinkle as one of the panelists addressing a hybrid live and digital audience, not unlike this one. Alfred's tenure as artistic director of Jazz Art Dance Theatre from 1986 to 2010 arguably represents one of the most important creative, educational and socio-political careers in the history of South African dance. Under his direction, a philosophy of professional dance training and performance emerged that was inclusive, all-encompassing, and which recognized the context of both the students who wanted to be trained as well as the audiences who wanted to watch them. In setting up a question about Alfred's vision for the future of live performance in South Africa, I shared with the panel that the dance move Step Ball Change is also the title of a novel written by Jean Ray and published by Penguin Random House. A story about love, fear, coping and growing up, peopled with recognizable characters you feel you've known your whole life. What really resonated for me at the heart of this charming read was just how much so many people in the art space have precisely this feeling about the sector and about each other, or at least we used to. Which was why I wanted to know from Alfred what title he would give the story of South African performance. Alfred patiently explained that step ball change is just a ball change, a quick change of weight from the ball of one foot to the other, and that it appears in most dance forms because it's a clever maneuver essential for adapting when and where necessary, for taking a step back and reassessing, and then falling back into the choreographic arc, to respond intelligently, and then to move forward appropriately. Alfred's interpretation of step ball change for a company of dancers, or even a company of soldiers, as he shared, is crystallized by his now famous figure of 8 exercise, which I vividly recall from my own training days at the University of Cape Town Drama School. A company of performance warms up and finds focus by running a figure of 8 pattern the length and breadth of the performance space, progressing to shorter, narrower, and increasingly complex patterns. COVID has seen the global creative community seeking to find focus and attempting to navigate the length and breadth of the spaces we inhabit with progressively narrower and increasingly complex challenges. Any reboot, finding any path to recovery and securing the future of the sector will require reflection, research, and conversation. Last year, at the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly, 2021 was declared the International Year of the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. The need to promote sustained and inclusive economic growth, to foster innovation, and to provide opportunities and empowerment for all with respect to every global citizen's human rights was affirmed. The ongoing need for diversifying production in exports, including in new sustainable growth areas such as the creative industries, was affirmed. In line with this, BASA Assembly, partnered by British Council, draws on principles of inquiry, curiosity, collaboration, suspension of judgment, diversity, respect, understanding, creativity, and agility. A metaphorical figure of 8 for business and the arts. The purpose of Assembly is to explode myths, to interrogate any biases or misconceptions that may be hindering meaningful and impactful cross-sectoral collaboration, and above all, to highlight possible new paradigms for future engagements. The creative economy is a powerful, emerging economic sector that contributes 3% to the global gross domestic product, strengthened by a surge in digitization and services. This contribution is likely to grow if certain key areas can be addressed. According to Pamela Coke-Hamilton, International Trade and Commodities Director for the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, if nurtured, the creative economy can boost competitiveness, productivity, sustainable growth, employment, and exports potential. As we assemble to contemplate the what, the when, and the how of falling back into step with one another, with our sector, with our audiences, with our sponsors and partners, my role is a simple one: to thank you for showing up. We look forward to taking the conversation forward with all of you. Terima kasih, dankie, nkosi, dankeschön, merci, thank you. Engage, explore, enjoy.
And that's a wrap on this launch package of the inaugural BASA Assembly partnered by British Council. Visit basa.coza and click on the Assembly banner on the homepage to explore the full Assembly programme. For now, that's it from me, Rashina Ratnam, the omniscient Assembly voice behind the scenes. We look forward to seeing you live and in person at the live panels planned for Thursday the 25th and Friday the 26th of March. Space is limited, so please take a moment to register.